Associate of Creative Impact here at the Department of Impact here at Cities United. So I hope everybody is doing pretty good out there, and I hope everyone is doing well. So we're going to get started and just kind of talk about a little bit of housekeeping rules here, and we just want to make sure that everybody is enjoying themselves. So we just want to make sure that we have our microphones on mute, and also make sure that if you are able to have your video on, we like to see your smiling face. So please have your cameras on because you are amongst friends and family. So we're here to have a good time and have an intimate conversation with each other. Also, if you have any questions, please use the raised hand function here that you have in Zoom so that we can make sure that we get your question answered for you as well. And also just want to remind you also that we are recording this session um, so that we'll also have that in record. So as well as we want to shout out all of our jurisdictions, all of our family out there, extended family. So if you could use the chat here that we have in Zoom, and please place your jurisdiction in the chat, and we're going to give you a shout out here. And while we're doing that, look, we got Madison, Wisconsin. Of course, DC's in the house. We got Memphis, Tennessee. Look, Charlotte, the Queen City. Oh yeah, Kankakee. I think I pronounced that right. I hope I didn't. Please tell me if I have Illinois. We got Columbia, South Carolina, Louisville, Kentucky, Lexington, again Washington, Milwaukee, Katy, Texas, Chicago. Yeah, another Louisville, Denver, Colorado. Look, Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. Yes. All right. Make sure we're not forgetting anybody, family. ATL, look, Georgia in the house. All right. All right. We'll make sure we haven't forgotten anybody. We're shouting out all our jurisdictions. So we just want to thank you all for attending. The Harris County, Houston, Texas. Okay. All right, family. Boston. Yeah, we're gonna keep going. Shout out your jurisdictions out there. If you haven't put your in the chat, please do so. We want to make sure that we give you ample recognition. Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Good deal. Okay, Northampton. Okay, that Massachusetts. Okay, yeah, Massachusetts, Chicago back in here. We got Madison, Wisconsin. All right. Yeah, welcome, family. Welcome, welcome. So again, I want to thank everybody, making sure I'm not missing anybody. Okay. All right. We got okay. Yep. Looking over at the boss. Okay, we got you. We got you, Peter. All right. Thank y'all, everybody. So, again, welcome to our June roll call, and I'm sure you're going to be touched by the conversation that we're going to have by our panelists and guests that we have today. So, with that being said, we want to get started because now we're going to kind of go into our roll call. Uh, so, we're going to be doing a poll so that we can give away a registration that we have, so some lucky person can be able to attend our convening that we'll have in October in Memphis. So, with that being said, all right, and here are some of our questions. So you should have a pop-up box on your screen that's going to have 4 questions. So your first question is, how would you describe your experience with CU roll call? And the number 2 is, have you started thinking about attending the upcoming Cities United convening? Number 3, which part of public safety redefined best reflects where you sit in your jurisdiction? And then number 4 is, which area of public safety redefined would you most like to deepen your understanding of? All right, I give folks some time to answer that. All right. I need the okay. All right, thank you. All right. So our agenda today, of course, we welcome all our visitors here. Thank you for attending our roll call today. So of course, we're going to go over our Cities United overview, as well as we'll dive into our topic today, which is managing fatherhood and loss, keeping our children's memories alive. And our moderator today is going to be Marcus Ellis. And our panelists today are Kenneth J. Forbes, Sr., Reverend Glenn Grayson, and Troy D.R. Grimes. Um, and then we'll wrap up from there with our convening ticket raffle winner, and then some of our network resources that we'll share with you, and then a sneak peek of what our July roll call will have to offer. So our vision for Cities United is to create safe, healthy, and hopeful communities for young Black men and boys and their families. Next slide. So our mission here at CU is supporting a national network of mayors and other local leaders who are committed to building comprehensive public safety ecosystems designed to reduce community violence and its impact on young Black men and boys, while also creating new pathways for them to thrive. Next slide. And here at Cities United, we have 5 values. Social justice, where we believe that all individuals have the right to live free from institutional racism, structural violence, and their remnants. Equity is where we believe that all individuals deserve what they need to be successfully economically, educationally, excuse me, need to be successful economically, educationally, socially, and politically. And what is also important to us is the youth voice, where we believe that young people are our assets in their communities and should be included in how it operates. Also, collaboration, where we believe that community change occurs when individuals, sectors, and systems have common vision and shared accountability. And innovation is where we believe that new or enhanced ideas and methods are important for continued improvement of outcomes for young Black men and boys. Next slide, please. And so also Cities United stands behind 5 principles where we innovate, consistently seeking new, culturally responsive strategies, policies, practices, and programs. While being supportive, we're enhancing conditions that advance staff health, safety, and well-being. Excuse me. And collaborative manner where we're leveraging knowledge, skills, talents, and experiences and promoting ideas from all levels of the organization while being flexible, effectively adapting to changing circumstances and expectations. And not to mention where we exceed those expectations, where we are effectively communicating desired outcomes, surpassing identified goals, and outperforming past actions. Next slide. So Cities United, where we believe it takes a systems-wide approach to achieve true public safety. We support jurisdictions in developing and implementing a comprehensive public safety strategy that involves leveraging the political will of elected and appointed officials and the public will of community-based organizations and leaders and young leaders. Together, we're interrupting the cycle of violence, dismantling systems of inequity, and supporting cities and counties as they invest in new infrastructures that creates real opportunities that allow young Black men and boys in the communities they live in to be safe, healthy, and hopeful. Next slide. So I'm sure you've seen this, but this is our comprehensive ecosystem where we are centering young Black men and boys, but as you can see, the process of interrupting the cycle of violence, as well as dismantling systems of inequity, and then investing in an infrastructure where all those components will equal your fully implemented strategy. And as well, we cannot forget the help of our traditional public safety and first responders, who are a key element. Next slide, please. And here is our roadmap where we define and show how we get to making or creating safe, healthy, and hopeful communities. As you can see in the bottom, where we are starting with our phase one to prepare the plan, and where we implemented all the way to a sustainability plan, and then all the key elements that fit into those phases. Next slide, please. So here we come to our panel discussion, and I'm sure you'll be touched by the conversation that we're about to have here. I'd like to introduce, of course, our moderator for the evening. It is going to be our Deputy Director of Impact of Cities United, Mr. Marcus Ellis.
Bro, believe it or not, I got a little promotion. I'm now the Deputy Director. So, hey, y'all, what's happening? Brother, thank you for bringing me in. I appreciate it. Definitely appreciate being here with you all for an extremely impactful conversation. Before we get into the depth of what we're going to be discussing today, I'd be remiss if I did not do two things. And one is to wish you all a very happy June 19th. Juneteenth was amazing. I hope that you did a whole bunch of things that just made you proud to be Black. Me, I ate ribs, and I'm proud of that. Yes, our diet starts today, but I had ribs on Juneteenth. And then I want to make sure that I shout out all the fathers that are here and tell you all happy Father's Day. Enjoy those socks, T-shirts, all those amazing, useful gifts that we got from our loved ones. And I really appreciate you all and want to uplift you and say thank you for all you do as fathers to your children, to the community. And just, we know how this CBI space is. We show up in a lot of different ways. So thank you all for that. And so today, we're going to have a powerful conversation that's going to talk about some amazing men in our work who are showing up every day despite suffering one of the most unimaginable losses that we can imagine, and that's of their child. And so Reverend Glenn Grayson, Mr. Troy Grimes, and Kenneth Forbes Sr. are going to take us through their journey. Not just take us through their journey, but highlight the lives of their children and speak toward their passion and how they have continued to show up daily, not just for themselves, but for their communities and those that they serve. And so I want to stop because I don't think I could do them the justice this deserved. I'm going to ask each one of our panelists to give us their names once again, their organizations, and the mission of those given organizations. And so if I could turn it over, and I'll start with you, Mr. Forbes.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for having me on and having a group of amazing gentlemen that's doing work across our nation in different areas of the country. My name, I started the Moms Group, which is called Mothers and Murdered Sons and Daughters, 10 years ago, after my son's trial was concluded. The man was convicted of his murder. I seeked out to try to get help with my depression and my anxiety and the grief. And I knew when I went to therapy, there was no answer. So I figured I had to go out and accomplish this mission on my own. With the Moms Group, our mission statement is to support grieving moms and dads with love, faith, and hope, to be available in our communities seeking knowledge, to grow, to recognize, remember, and rebuild our communities. So that's our mission statement. And we actually, this past March, it'll be 10 years since we've been available to the community.
Thank you, brother. We truly appreciate you being here and look forward to hearing more. Thank you for all the work that you're doing and how you show up every day. Let's go to Troy Grimes. How you doing, brother?
Doing well. Yeah, same with me. Thanks for having me. Like they said, my name is Troy Grimes. I'm out of Denver, Colorado, and I'm the co-founder and chief executive director for nonprofit Legacy Foundation for Family and Community Development. We exist to support and have our communities with healthy fathers, with healthier families, and to exist inside of a wellness-centered ecosystem. And so I'm glad that I can be here today and that this platform has been open to provide a safe space for to share a little more as we go on.
Thank you, brother. Same. Appreciate you being here, and thank you for all the work that you do. Reverend Grayson, how you doing, sir? Yeah, Reverend Grayson with us? All right, for the sake of time, we'll keep moving. If somebody on our team could make sure that Reverend Grayson is aware of the link, and once he joins, we'll have him do his introduction as well. So I had the opportunity to check in with these amazing men earlier today, and we had a conversation around what we want to discuss. And one of the things that I want to be sure that we do throughout this time together is, while we do reflect on the loss, and what that means as a father in a space where we aim to save lives, right? That is a huge part of what our mission is. And as we talk about keeping Black young men and boys and their families safe, to suffer a loss such as this in a field such as ours is unique. It's also unique as a man in this space. And so we really did want to. Okay, got you. Thank you. We'll bring them in as soon as we get that sound taken care of. So one of the things I want to ask you all is, tell us about your child. I want to hear something from you in terms of one of the favorite memories or a personality trait of your loved one. In no particular order. Tell me something about your child that we wouldn't normally know.
The unique, Father's Day, let's can afford. Father's Day was yesterday, and I don't know the relationship that a lot of our fathers have with their children, but I actually had the pleasure of raising my son as an infant in my household. And the most amazing thing about it, raising a son and you being able to be hands-on with him 24/7, is that the traits and characteristics you pick up, from his dad. He had the will to succeed. He was active in sports since 6 years old. Because me being in the military, I pretty much thought that playing sports is not about being in an NFL. It's about having some discipline, learning teamwork, and learned a concept of bringing kids together from different backgrounds into one goal is just to be successful. I coached football for 24 years in our league. I mean, in our area of town, and just to see him grow and develop into that kid who had a lot of discipline, and he was loved by a lot of people. And we always say when we lose a son or daughter how great of a person they were, and he was that. But unfortunately, we have raised good kids, but we have to protect our kids from the unknown and the ones that didn't have the same rearing as my son did. So not only do you have great kids in our neighborhood, it's just the fact that you don't know what's on these other kids' minds and what destructive behavior that they inherit over time. So Kenny was just a great kid. He mimicked me. He was my twin if you all look at the picture. So I really enjoyed being his father.
So wow, this is Reverend Grayson. I can kind of ditto what you just said in terms of our kid, or my son, Jerron Xavier Grayson. I tell folks that I cut his umbilical cord at the hospital when he was born, and I closed his casket. I was there the whole length of his life and grateful that I was in his life. he was much more than me, which I'm proud of. In his 18 years of life, he soared. He was MVP for his high school football team. He swam. He played basketball. He was just had a lot of swag. They called him Polo G because he threw down every day he left the house. But he had personality. He was loved. Not only uh, he just showed love. He was not only a good looking kid from the outside, but even more on the inside. He had charisma and just was able to chill people out, make his peers do the right thing. A natural born leader, and in his short life, he impacted so many lives, and so he was sorely missed.
Right.
So I feel you, bro.
Thanks.
Yeah, so for myself, Destiny Kivante Lachelle, our daughter, my wife and I, we have 8 children, and Destiny was our youngest girl. There's only one younger than her. And so, um, in my eyes, Destiny was my baby, right? Baby girl. And so, so many great memories. Destiny could do everything. She played every sport: volleyball, track, basketball, softball, cheerlead. She sang. Um, Anything she did, she excelled at. And she did everything with just a smile and just an open heart. And everyone knew that about Destiny. I think in terms of memory or great memory, what just always I come back to or reflect upon, even this opportunity, right? Because we do this work every day, so we deal with loss. Like me, I deal with loss every week, right? And so, in that scenario, often looking at how do I make sure to manage my emotions to not get caught up in some of my own memories and reflections when you're trying to support another family or another loss within the community. But this opportunity has given an opportunity to really reflect. And so as I was reflecting, just the major memory that I have is just really Destiny's ability to light up the room and just make me smile or make anyone smile as soon as she entered the room.
Thank you, Troy, and thank you to you all. I just really want to pause here, and I know on my behalf and everyone on this call, just offer you all our condolences. We know that after the passing of a loved one, the world tends to somewhat continue and go on. But for you as a father, this is daily. This is not something that you get over in that sense. And the fact that you all still show up each and every day is huge. And I'm just going to go on and put it out here to all of y'all. And this is a Black man that is okay with crying. And I'm going to be really clear that I might not make it through this one without shedding some tears. And so don't you be ashamed either. This is a part of the process. And so, Mr. Rev Grayson, I wanted to ask you didn't get a chance to tell us about your organization. Tell us a little bit about the amazing work you do.
Yeah, so I'm the founder and executive director of the Center That Cares. And we started out 26 years ago now, really beginning as an after-school tutorial enrichment program. We grew into rapid rehousing for homelessness from 1824, entrepreneurship, as well as our biggest really contract or grant is the violence prevention piece called REACH. And so REACH has about 40 workers in the field in all 6 zones, just trying to prevent violence and seeing it as a disease and trying to make a difference. I'm honored to sit in a space that's named after my son. It's a 14,000 square foot building that after he passed, we found a dilapidated, closed building. And through the support of the whole city and fundraising and my board, we turned the closed building into an active community center. And so I know it's a lot hard for a lot of parents to go to cemeteries, but as I come through the doors of this building every day, like this morning, and seeing 100+ kids in our after-school program and our summer program, it fills my heart knowing that even though we miss him, that his life has not been in vain because we carry it on in the building named after him.
Wow. Wow. I appreciate that. And you really did kind of take me right into my next question. And that's how did you navigate your new normal and in terms of balancing your own grief with your daily responsibilities and our particular profession? We have a lot of conversations about how we turn anger into action, and we try to, we walk in purpose and assignment, and sometimes that assignment comes from way too many times in our work from a place of grief and loss. And so could you all tell me how you've been able to do that, and some of the skill sets you've had to use to navigate that space?
Well, it's the Kendall Forbes again. Me in particular, I have to accept the loss first, and accepting that means that I'll have to develop my own coping mechanisms to deal with the grieving. And one thing that came to mind is just growing up as a child and as a young man that when I fell down and maybe scraped my knee, I fell off a bike. I always had older aunts and uncles would tell me, you quit all that crying because boys don't cry. When I was in the military, when I was coaching football, I used to tell them when the kids was running and they said, Coach, I can't run anymore. I said, well, get down and give me some push-ups because you're not supposed to give up. You're a man. When I was in the Marine Corps, they said, suck it up, Marine. And you just always had to have that drive. You had to keep going no matter what circumstances that you were going through. But when I lost my son, I said, hold up. All this stuff I was taught that never prepared me for this. So when I started crying on my way to work in the car, and then on my way to work, coming back home in the car, I just felt that being open and saying that, hey, it's okay to grieve, it's okay to cry, it's okay to be frustrated, it's okay to talk about depression, it's okay to talk about anxiety, because by me doing that, I was able to help a lot of men that's going through the same issues that I was, as far as 13 years in grieving process compared to somebody last week in 7 days in the grieving process. So just being open book to those who was wondering how you navigate through the grief process it helped me to be more available, because then I was more sensitive. I was open. They was able to ask questions. I was able to cry with families, and just having all those accolades behind me. Being in the Marine Corps, and being married, and just being a man in particular. I just knew that being maybe a model for other men to accept grieving and accept all the pain that came along with that, I was able to really bring this moms group together and really be a pillar to the community. And I know everybody's saying moms. Why you want to call it moms group? Because if I called it dads, I wouldn't be talking to you all right now. And I don't know if he's on here or not, but I really appreciate Anthony Smith in the last 12 months, how he really opened up to me and encouraged me to be on something like this on a larger scale. So I just think men, it makes sense now for us to lead the community. And I use the mom group as a platform for normalness, even though it never be normal. But I want to thank Cities United and just give me this opportunity to speak with a lot of people and just to say, hey, these men are grieving. We're part of this solution. Just give us a chance. And I think we're going to be doing some amazing work here in the future.
Mr. Forbes, I want you to, we're going to stay on that point you made as it relates to the name of your organization. you shared some things with me earlier that I don't think most are aware of. And so I want to come back around to how even the CVI community can show up as it relates to men leading in this particular space. And so, and with appreciation for you sharing that, you cried after your child died. I can tell you from personal experience, the first time I saw my dad cry was when my brother was killed. I had never seen him cry my entire life until I lost my brother. And so he changed me into a man that knew it was okay to cry. And I think that has weighed heavily on my life. So thank you for opening up there. Um, Troy, we'll come to you next, and then we'll come to you, Ray.
Yes, in terms of navigating, I think I'm still navigating. To be
Yeah.
quite honest, I think every day it's a day by day journey. I think for me in particular, is somewhat unique. We all have our unique experiences with parenting and fathering, and we're dealing with grief and loss. And for myself, as I said, have 8 children. Um, However, my wife and I have blended families. So even though we never use any of those words or step or any of those types of things, for me, navigating the loss of Destiny, was pretty difficult, because, I could remember folk, even family members would call and maybe ask, how's my wife doing and this sort of thing, which they should, and of course, and maybe not even ask me or even say certain things like, now that was your wife's daughter. I mean, I know they're both yours, but and say things like that. And so for me, that was pretty it was pretty painful dealing with the grieving process to even be discounted as not being able, or I shouldn't be grieving um, my child in the way that I was, and so that was something that was pretty difficult for me in terms of like navigating. I believe I kind of did it like I do most things, and the first thing I went to is serving, right? And so um, began to serve my wife, serve my family, make sure everybody was as well as they could be, and serving the community. And in doing so, I did something that was probably saved my life and saved my family. Is that I started in 2020. Our daughter passed in 2019. In 2020, I started and through my fatherhood program, Project Proud Fatherhood Program, which is a pillar of our nonprofit now. I started a men's healing group. I am Men's Healing Group, and we met monthly, not specifically just for grieving fathers, but just for men and Black men in particular. I began with a group of peers, a bunch of male leaders, teachers, um, mentors, therapists, other nonprofit leaders, etc., here that I knew were dealing with things and continuing to show up every day, like you all have been saying, but really didn't have a community for ourselves. And that peer group, like I said, I believe it really saved my life. We still meet and still have that programming till this day. And although I'm the executive director, I still act as a facilitator for that particular group because as I did that for the men in our community, I quickly learned that it was serving me selfishly, probably more than it was serving everyone else, is what I shared with them so much, what they were pouring into me and, getting together. Sometimes we had topics, sometimes we didn't. So many tears, laughs, guidance. Sometimes we were going through Tai Chi or meditation together or juicing and all these different things that we did. But each time, or as time went by, I truly learned how that group in itself, like I said, is something that helped to help me navigate to where I am today. and still being here, being the father and the husband to my family, and being who I am to the community as well.
Thank you, Troy. Right?
So I'm not sure how well I navigate the process. It's been since 2010. I do know, that a bullet has no respect of person. I'm a minister, my wife's an attorney, and again, it has no respect of person. It took my son's life at 18. But I'm a hands-on pastor in the community, in my community, in the streets, and everyone know me. And I think because they have watched me navigate through my pain, it has given a lot of people strength through my strength. Just watching how I still smile, how I still press on, and how I still make a difference. And so I don't think I'll ever totally navigate through this process. I just try to wake up every day and make a difference. I think this is the hardest season for me, strangely, and I don't share this, but um, graduations and weddings, pomp and circumstance. When I hear music like that, you talk about crying. I mean, so it's very challenging. At the same time, you're kind of going to support a member or a kid from our program come across a stage, and then your body reminds you that that will never happen for you. I'll never see my son come across a college stage. I'll never see my son, walk down an aisle to meet his bride, and I'll never have a grandchild from my baby boy. And so my trigger is strangely those occasions where I'm at a joyful occasion for somebody else, and I tie into it, but at the same time, in the middle of it, I can be in such devastating pain that I can barely make it through or put on a face of support when I'm internally struggling to make it through that ceremony. It's very hard. And so I went to a graduation last week, and, all I could do is reflect on, that won't happen. Grateful. It's just, so I haven't been able to kind of share that in a group setting, my heart. I kind of wear two masks, the mask of a smile and support, and that's legit. But I think, carry my pain internally to myself, and it hurts.
Mm.
So that is one heartfelt. Don't just kind of pivot and go to the next question. And then for you to even trust this space in something that you had not shared before. Red One, thank you, Troy. And before I come back to you, Kenneth, I know, Troy, you've talked about the support groups, and I can only imagine that what was just stated is probably a shared pain that others have. I want to kind of start trying to ask the question around the thing that we always hear. You got to put the mask on yourself before you can help anybody else, because if you can't breathe, how can you breathe into others? Tell me a little bit about how the supports you offer. That's one thing, but what supports are you all getting as you navigate through this process? Because here's what I know from my loss is that I can't work my way through it. I can't, kind of entrench myself into the passion that I have without stopping, pausing, and asking myself, am I okay? And that's a hard balance. It's been a struggle for me my entire career, but I can only imagine had my pops even had people like you to talk to. I don't remember a support group for my dad when my brother passed away. And so tell me what support looks like for you all, the supporters.
I can just say that it's Kenneth Forbes again. I can just say for myself that it's hard because you are supposed to be the leader, not only leader of the household, just leader of your neighborhood, leader of the community. And you always want to shoulder everybody else's pain and grief, and that sometimes it has become a difficult task, and it's hard. And what you have to do is start digging back into your faith, and that's one of the things that I lost my son. I used to tell my son, "Don't have any kids. You can't take care of your kids." You know, it's something you always say, but when he left here at 19 years old, he had no kids.
Yeah.
So I don't have anything that reminds me of my son to kind of like keep me going. I do have another son. He's in college right now, but that's what keeps me going. And that's what really helps me out a whole lot, because not only when I struggle trying to deal with 800 plus people in the mom's group, uh, I don't have enough energy for my immediate family, which is my son. And then that takes a toll on you. And what I have learned to do is take a time out and say to myself that, hey, I need to breathe, I need to pray, and I need to really focus on my faith, because that never goes anywhere. It just get diminished. And you have to start building your faith. And I always say, the advice that you give people, you need to take the advice yourself also. The way you want people to heal, you need to take that advice yourself also. So that's some of the tools that I've used when I'm dealing with grieving, and when my energy is replenished, I have to take a time out. And the good thing about the moms group is that I have people who come and help me uh, replenish some of my energy. Because not only are you teaching people grieving, in the process of grieving, and what to expect during grieving, you're also teaching them how to help you also. So the more you teach and the more they learn, the more you can just lean on the people in your circle, because my circle has changed tremendously.
Mm.
I don't have the same family and friends that I used to have 13 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It just changes, and it's not for the bad. It's always when you change your circle and you change your mentality, you don't change for the worse. You change for the good and the betterment. Because once you tap out over grieving, because I do have people in the moms group who succumb to grieving and are no longer here with us. But it's a constant reminder that this grieving can take you to, it can take you out of here. So what I do is lean on the group, and the group, we lean on each other and we learn from each other, because everybody grieves different. So there's a whole lot of uh, information that you can get from other people, you know. And just like Mr. Grimes said, it was his wife's daughter. And when I was married, that was my son and not my wife's son. So we grieved a whole lot different. And it's really challenging. And the numbers say that when it's the other person's child is lost, you know, relationships do separate. And I'm just glad you all was able to, you know, come together and stay together. But it doesn't happen to everyone. But I just think you have to just lean on your faith, lean on your new circle of friends, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Do
Mm.
not be afraid to ask for help, because the help is there. It's just that people want to know if they can help you, because they're so afraid to approach, because they don't know what to say and they don't have the right words to say.
Mm. It's powerful, Mr. Forbes, and great advice. Thank you for sharing that. Troy, did you want to weigh in there at all? Because I know you're actively participating and leading peer groups as well.
Yeah, yeah. So we do the healing circles, like I said, once a month. So that's something that I actively participate in. That, you know, that encompasses quite a bit in terms of just different modalities of healing and nervous system resets, et cetera, everything that we do there. And that's great. But again, I'm facilitating that. And so, you know, although some people, you know, they look to me and they say, I'm the example, you know, I can honestly say I'm still a work in motion in terms of what, like, learning how to take care of myself throughout the process, even I think now seven years later. And so, you know, I can honestly remember it was just last year, another organization began to have some support groups for men specifically for grieving, and It happened to be a brother who I grew up with, who's just, he's he's a reverend, and so he's been in that field for a long time, and so, but moving into some of this work, he confided in me and wanted me to kind of consult with him, and said, "Hey, can you come and co-facilitate these first few with me, just so just so I know that I'm not doing any harm, to unintended harm to the community." And the first one I went to, um, I although I had been doing my healing circles for as long as I had, being there and not really being the facilitator, and kind of being able to be a guest, um, first time ever being in a space like that, all other grieving men in the stories, I lost it, to be quite honest. I for the first time, I had totally, in front of folks, I had totally lost it. And, I had to apologize to him. Of course, he said, no apology, because I was like, I know I was supposed to kind of be here to co-facilitate, or kind of, help consult with you. But that moment was for me to be able to
Yeah.
let go. And, I have to be honest, I haven't been back. So I'm still in my process of learning and knowing what's best for me, and how I continue to work through my own. But like I said before, all I know for now, and what I teach and share with the men, is daily practices help, right? And so I heard
Yeah.
just basic things like prayer every day, breathing, breath work, meditation. Those things, those daily practices are things that I've hung my hat on. And I can tell, even if you get away from it for a few days, you think you're too busy, or this, that, and the other. I feel it. I feel it emotionally. I feel it in my body, and so it just reminds me to get back to just those simple daily practices every day. When I wake up, and before I go to sleep. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my journey.
This is it's a marathon. Nothing about it is a race. So, Troy, respect to your process. Respect to you doing the road work of taking this journey daily, not just for yourself but for your family. Look, you said 7 years ago. That's your baby girl we talking about. 7 years ago, like I stated, that can feel like yesterday in your heart. And so, yeah, brother, stay the course. Stay the course. I want to go to what I mentioned that Mr. Forbes raised earlier, but I'm a pivot this around because I want to get everybody's experience. We had a conversation around how the reaction to men in this grieving space, or men leading in conversation and in leading organizations that are focused on a loss of child, can somehow look different from you all, and not in a positive way. Mr. Forbes, I will come to you first to open up a little bit about what you shared earlier, even how you arrived at the name of your organization, and even a bit of strategy behind that. And I think that this is something I really want the audience to lock into, because it's important that we recognize what we have on this call is, quite frankly, even in their moments of being vulnerable, some of the strongest men in our work. And that is to be appreciated. And so, Mr. Forbes, if you could say a little bit more there.
Yes, I lost my son to gun violence December the 12th, and December 23rd, 2012, which is actually 2 days before Christmas. And my son's body stayed lying there going into Christmas Eve. And I had a 10-year-old son at the time, and so we had to celebrate like Christmas maybe a day later after that, and didn't tell him until Christmas Eve about his brother. And when I went to therapy, I asked the therapist was actually charting while I was talking, and I'm retired from the VA, and she was charting, and I kind of looked up and just seen her actually charting, asking me questions, but still charting. I guess I don't know if she was maybe doing some charting from the previous client, but I simply just asked, you know what, have you ever lost a son or daughter to gun violence? And her reply was no. So I ended the meeting there. And when I walked out, I said, I knew this was going to be a journey that I had to take on my own. And so after the trial was over with, I was sitting back, what is next? I'm grieving. I'm suffering from the major depressive disorder. Um, uh, I don't know what to do. So I said, I'm going to start a group. A lot of conversations were dealing with a lot of homicide, and moms was always the ones who was getting their interviews and getting their attention. So I said, you know what, I'm going to trick the community, and I'm going to call it Mothers of Murdered Sons and Daughters of Kentucky. And when I walk into a room, I would sit at the table and everybody would be greeted at the table that was part of the mom group. And when they get to me, they would always just say, hey, how you doing? And keep walking. And that was I understood that. Maybe they thought I was a husband or boyfriend at the table. When I was introduced and stood up, they realized that I didn't have on lip gloss and some heels. It was a guy with a beard to start the mom's group. So I had to trick the community into accepting my story. And now it's starting to be more accepted, but it's still embarrassing that I have to talk about the community here that I live in, the community I live in, that I'm still not able to sit at the table to make decisions about gun violence prevention, ways that we can do better in our community, how we can be better as neighbors. And there's a lot of discrimination I think with men in general, to when you sit in a room full of people that doesn't look like you and doesn't have the same sex as you, that they'll compare their loss greater than mine because my son was attached to a umbilical cord, and then you're a dad and not a mom, so you could never agree more than me, and that it's hurtful and it's painful, and the fight is just tremendous. And I have ideals of how to raise young men and what to do about young men. I've been around young men coaching football. 24 years, I've been a pillar to the community. And it's just still painful to this day to not get the support that you want, that you need in order to move forward and to help and decrease some of these numbers. There's no financial support. Everything that I do is out of pocket. I'm a retiree from the military, and everything how this whole group is funded is out of pocket. You can go to the top places in our city to get some representation to help us, and there's zero response. And it's just something that it's tough for me to go through, but I know my passion is there. So what I do is just stand fast and keep doing the work and don't let all the negative activities around me, deter me from doing what this plan that I have for the rest of my life. Because I died 13 years ago. Died 13 years ago. But what I'm doing now is things in the community that keeps the pain away. And that's just serving the community, serving the young men and women that need my help, helping the families. That's my pain relief. There's no grief pill. There's no grief pill. For a headache, there's a pill. There's no grief pill. So what I have to do is keep praying, keep thanking people like Anthony Smith to just have me on this platform, and for people all across the nation just can hear that, yes, we do struggle. Here in this small community, we struggle. Men struggle just to be accepted. So with that being said, I did have to call it the mom's group because the dad's group would not have me here today. So I just appreciate this time and for people just to hear my voice and how passionate I am about this. And the work that I'm doing and the work that I'll keep trying to do to make a difference and change, that's my pain reliever, because I'm no longer really here existing. I'm just here just to help out. But when my son died, I died along with him, and it's just really painful. But my faith keeps me uh, uh, keeps driving me, and I don't like to talk about too much religion, but God has a road for each one to travel. I found out what road He gave to me to travel, and I do it in my speed. And I don't go 100 miles an hour anymore. I go in my speed. And if people don't like the speed that I'm going, guess what they can do on the expressway? You can always go around. But I just love the speed that I'm doing so I can enjoy every moment and every step of this journey that I'm on.
I feel you. I feel you, brother.
Go ahead, Ray. Yes,
Can I
sir.
comment? So I ditto again what Brother Kenneth just said. A part of me died October 17th, 2010. I can't tell you the percentage, but a slice of me died with my son. You're never the same. It's a club that I wouldn't wish on my enemy we're in, to lose a child, especially through gun violence, to lose a child, period. And sometimes it's almost a look like you can be identified when in a group when they say law, and it's a look on our faces of a loss that's deep that you can sometime through your experience almost see it. Like I know what you've been through, what I've been through. I never say to a person who lost a loved one, I know what you've been through, because we're all at different levels, and so I don't make that statement. I know people have lost one child, three children, and so I can't say I do. I do know what it feels like for me, and so I take it slow. I pour myself also into the work of making a difference. I've always raised kids kind of naturally in my home, and so I poured into still trying to pour into the lives of young people, especially young men trying to make a difference. I often say turning your misery into your ministry. Turning your pain, your misery into a ministry, and it sounds like that's what the other brothers on the panel has done. And to remember our child, I draw strength. My son is tatted on my arm. He was number 7, like I said, most valuable player, playing different sports. Um, and sometimes I just not only so often I call on God, like you said, through my faith for strength. But then I say, I ask my angel Jerron to also, watch over us. And when there's something on the table, I say, Jerron, just may your spirit guide us. And so it's more than a notion. I have not formalized a group. I do more on people who know my experience, who hearts are heavy, more one-on-one. I believe the Lord is going to lead me into a more formalized setting. But I feel you. I don't think we talk about. And then I talk to some men who are in even another level of pain because they were incarcerated when they lost their child, so they couldn't even be there. They couldn't even, uh, grieve the same way. And so there's a lot of guilt and some other issues. And so it's a whole gamut of ways of how we reach, especially men, in our pain. And again, we're trained not to share it. We're trained to keep it to ourselves and let it, stew internally to give us an ulcer or a cancer. And so it's real important that we do. Kudos to the brothers who have groups to open up to share. And but it's just not easy. And whether it's a year ago, 6 months ago, or 15, 20 years ago, it's you kind of think yourself today, like, I don't want to go online and take a picture of him at 18 to see what he would look like, at 34. Um, but I don't have any, thank God I have 5 other grandchildren, but I have no kids from him. My memory ends of him in terms of a physical picture, at 18. And so it still, just overwhelms me. Um, I'm grateful for a wife there, because a lot of marriages fall apart after the loss of a child. Um, and so we are still together. Our anniversary is tomorrow, 42 years. And my oldest son and daughter, we don't talk. Sadly, we just don't we don't talk about it enough. I think we all suffer separately, but we're all in the work, making a difference. My daughter is the COO of CARES Reach, and my son is a community organizer. So we all do work around um, just making a difference around violence prevention. The last thing I state, that missing child can make a difference. But Jerron was the one who could crack a joke and cut through a lot of the heaviness. And so sometimes my oldest two, son and daughter, get into an argument and go back and forth. Jerron's not here to be that, say, shut, whatever he would say, when he would say it, we would just start laughing. And so we had an incident, even on my birthday, and they kind of got at it. And I said, I don't have my Jerron, and no one else can do it. And so it is what it is. Yeah.
Take your time, brother. Take your time.
Yeah.
Take your time. Take your time.
That's what it is. I tell folks if I won $10 million, I would rather have my son back any day for any amount of money. At any amount. So yeah, there's nothing, and that's why I don't value anything material anymore. Like I could lose a gold diamond ring. I could lose, a car accident. I'll tear up my car. I said, I can, these glasses that can break my glasses, whatever, but nothing can replace your physical child. And so, it's part of your journey. But God has been good. And again, I do have to pray a lot. I don't say why really much anymore. I still wrestle with, like right now, even a young man who allegedly took his life, the system don't value a Black life the way other lives. He only got 14 years. And sometimes I tell people still get a restitution checks like $14 or whatever. I can't cash them, whatever they are, because it's just, I want my son. That's all.
Thank you, Ray. It goes without saying it. For every man, you have some new prayer warriors on this phone. If that is the belief of those, you guys have continued to raise the strength of prayer, and so we won't overlook that. It is for some our tool, and thank you for sharing it. It's a part of your toolbox. Troy, I'm gonna come to you. I'm not sure if you want to weigh in on this particular topic.
Oh, no, you can move
Yep.
forward.
Yep. I wanna ask a question that will be our last formalized question of this panel discussion, and that's share one thing with us about your child. Share one thing about your child that allows us to see them as you see them. Share one thing about your child that allows us or strangers to your children. Share something with us that allows us to see them through your eyes.
My son, what's so amazing about this journey that we're on is that I don't think we're asking for any sympathy. I just think we're just looking for some understanding from the community and the people that we live amongst. We're fathers, we're grieving fathers, we're human, and we want to be accepted in this process. We want to be looked upon as leaders because we want more men to lead in our community than ever before. My son, he was funny. He was, it's amazing that was if the picture that you all saw, him in that white suit, Man, he reminds me of Angel. When he used to come up the steps, he would always just peek his head up his, and I could just see his head and say, "Hey, Daddy," when he come home from school and go on back down the step. And I could smell him from time to time. And my son had a few hundred people at his funeral. The work that I've been doing in the last 10 years, thousands of people know him that never met him, that never shook his hand, never seen him smile, never heard him laugh. Thousands of people knows my son. And that means that he's still living. He's living within me. He's living in the community. He's saying, I'm proud of my pops. And I'm really taking that as a motivation. And I think he's really watching my steps and helping me with my steps. And there's one thing I've always told myself: hate is a very strong word. Forgiveness, that's hard when you're dealing with this. But I had to tell myself to forgive the guys that were responsible for my son's murder, or I'd never see him again. Because hate is I believe is a sin in itself. So I had to let all of that go in order for me to move forward, because I would never see my son again if I continue to hate and be mad and continue to live in a dark place. So my son, and I want to give this to you all, he has helped me move forward one step at a time. And that's the strength that I put into him. And now he's putting it back into me, and he's no longer here. Wow. So with that being said, I just want everybody to understand that the loss, yeah, you have to cope with the loss, but it's still a whole lot more to living to do. And you have to take these conversations that we have and with people that you never met before. And we're all sharing the same experience, but we're just grieving at different time and intervals, but we're all sharing the same. And I think this is something that can help us move forward to get better understanding what it's like for a father to grieve. And I think this is a great panel. It was a great discussion, and the questions were very sensitive, and they was mindful, and they were okay, and they was really put me in a great place. Yeah, and that's one thing about my son. If you've met him, you would think that he just resembles me. So all of those the waves that come in and go with grieving, I used to like fight that, but now I embrace it, because I say my son is thinking about me today. Some days I don't feel like dealing with it, but I have to deal with it. But it's just his presence now. So when grief come in waves, sometimes it's minimal, sometimes it's really hard, and some days you don't want to move. You have to embrace all of that and just think about your loved one being in your presence. Because if you're thinking about them that hard, it means they are in your presence and they're still living within you. So we have to just understand that grieving process. And I'm 13 years in. You all are different years in, but guess what, brothers? We are still here. We still here. And we might not look like we're grieving on the outside, but on the inside, we tore up. But look, man, we are still here. We are still able. And it's all about God, you know. So that's just what I have to say, just about my son in particular, and what he meant to me, and what he would probably to this day would have meant to the community.
Mr. Forbes, thank you so much for that. And so in the mind frame of sensitivity, there's no person on this call that would not say that this has been impactful. This has had heavy moments. And so for Troy and for Rev, answer that question at your own will. I don't want to. I want to make sure that we're not sparking up anything that might draw any unwanted kind of emotions here as we close out. I know that we've had a process here, but please, if it's something that you're comfortable asking, please do. Mr. Forbes, thank you for what you shared.
Yeah, thanks, Kenneth. I appreciate you, brother.
Yeah.
We haven't met formally, but I appreciate you. And yeah, I definitely want to share about Destiny and, just to give you all a picture, leave you all with a picture. For Legacy, we have, as for our logo, we have an Adinkra symbol, Olunwi Fiquan, which means love never loses its way home, or the good book says love never fails. And so um, that was with Destiny in mind. My family and I also want to elevate something that you shared, Reverend Grayson. My family, all of my children, we're all involved with the organization. So we're all servant leaders in the community, same as yours. And so, and part of that is, not just the legacy of our entire family, but the legacy that Destiny left behind of love. Imagine um, a funeral where a 23-year-old Black young lady is taken by one bullet to the heart, and hundreds of people show up to the funeral. People never met, some people never seen, etc. Students, classmates, adults, children, everyone. And everyone that spoke to myself or my wife or the family all had a similar story about the reason why they were there is because Destiny touched them in such a way that they were made to feel special. She made each and every person, including myself, feel special every time that she engaged with them. And they all told stories about how she did that, how she would just come and ask if they needed anything, how she would give them a smile, how she would break up arguments, everything. It was all done because she just had this unique ability to show nothing but love. Um, Never hate, hardly ever anger, hardly anything ever, except for love, and that's the legacy um, that she left. And so, um, for me personally, it really helped to reshape who I am as a man, to reevaluate myself. And of course, this is a journey, as we've shared, and there's no perfect man, but being able to have my daughter as an anchor, to know what the power of love has been, that's we talk about the loss, but that's the blessing of having an angel, um, to anchor your life in such a way, to lean upon in such a way, not far beyond the physical, but to have that real spiritual um, anchor in an angel, such as I have. And so I just appreciate you for asking that question. I appreciate this panel, appreciate Cities United. And you asked earlier, just real quickly, you asked earlier, um, how are fathers taken, or men taken in this field? And I still don't
Yeah.
think that it's really, I still don't really feel that, it's really acceptable, even by our own, to
Mhm.
show weakness, as much as it's said. Um, However, I believe that like panels like this, no matter if you all know or not, this has been a help. This has helped me today. This has been something that I don't get often, and I doubt these brothers do either. And it's something that is leaving. It's filled me. It's filled me up in a way that I don't often get. So I appreciate you all.
And
We appreciate you.
yeah, again, I did the same ditto. Uh, I really, in hearing my two brothers' story, it mimics really my son's story in terms of love. And so we have a permanent connection in that a lot of things each of y'all indicated and shared, I go, yeah, I feel you. And so that was confirmation and reassurance. Jerron was just a burst of sunshine. He was a blessing to my wife and my kids and the community and my family, but it's a blessing to the whole city. And people indeed lined the streets for his homegoing service. But 16 years later, I still, even in the last week or two, I still run into people who stop me and say, I went to school with G, and G really was phenomenal. And they don't have to. I'm in the grocery store. Oh man, you're G's dad. He really touched my life, and so that's still so impactful that people remember and have a memory of how impactful and 18 years the impact my baby boy made. I used the theme G stands for never touch a gun. They called him Little G. And that's what I stand by through my work. G stands for Never Touch a Gun. And so as we marched for Violence Prevention Month, our sixth annual Reach March, and the support of the city and my board and my family and friends, his memory stays alive. And I'm honored that, to connect it through Cities United, and that connection, Sister Napa Williams, who has pulled me in and challenges me, to share my story. And I've been on some panels. And so I'm honored and humbled at the same time. But I'm grateful that he's watching over us. And G is my guy. And thank you for this opportunity.
Listen, you all have said thank you to Cities United so many times, and Anthony is indeed on a call, and along with other team members. And we want to say thank you to you all. Your stories, your children, this is our why. And I know that there are others on this call that feel the same way. I just got to say that, saying your children's names and seeing their pictures and hearing their stories, and I I know this is maybe at times hard to hear, but your children are very much still alive. They are still present. They are still showing up daily in spaces, not just for you, but for others that care about them. And so I want to be, really, really transparent about that. I stated this earlier. For you men to get on this call the day after Father's Day and be willing to have this conversation is special. I hope that not only that we, through your transparency, share with our network the importance of uplifting men who are leading in these spaces, who are doing this work daily. And as stated by you, Mr. Forbes, the tie to the umbilical cord is extremely important. And we definitely want to uplift our sisters doing this work. It's important that our moms are in this space, but our brothers have a rightful, they have the right to have the opportunity to grieve and to advocate for and show up for their children, even in loss, continuously. And so we hear you, we see you, we appreciate you. And I want to just say thank you for the opportunity to even have this conversation. This is not the end. I hope something is even formulated organically through the three of you. And we want to help at Cities United to continue to build upon that. We are also very aware that a lot of emotions have sparked throughout this call, and we want to encourage anyone who needs to reach out to Cities United, whether it be immediately, whether it be in the days to come, and we will work to offer you the supports needed as we all continue to navigate through grief and loss. So thank you, brothers. I appreciate you. And I'm going to turn it back over to our host. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. I had to give myself a minute. Thank you, brothers, again for sharing. All right. So now we want to. Oh, thanks, Sarah. So now we want to be able to pass this over. We are actually going to talk about our convene, and then we're actually going to actually mention our winner for the contest. So that's going to be next. So next slide, please. So here I'd like to make sure that we are asking everybody to make sure you are not going to miss our upcoming convening that's going to be in Memphis. So if you haven't registered yet, please take this time here to register. You can register at the URL here down at the bottom, our tinyurl.com/CU13 Memphis. And if not, you can scan this QR code here on the screen. But we want to make sure that you are attending because we would love for you to be there. All right, and our next slide, please. So now we are going to present our June roll call winner. Now, I cannot do a drum roll with my tongue, so just imagine virtually. Drum roll, please. And our winner is Ernest Covertson. I'll make sure I pronounced your name right, and I apologize if I didn't, but we want to congratulate you as our winner and guest for the upcoming convening in October in Memphis.
Oh, wow. All right, all right.
Congratulations. All right. So next, before we end our roll call, we just want to share some of our CU resources as well as our next roll call. So as you can see, we have resources that you can also visit on our website at citiesunited.org/resources. But as well, you can also access some of those resources here by some of the clickable links that we have available. And then please make sure that you enroll for July's roll call, which is going to cover the topic of the first ecosystem and celebrating Black family. And that's going to be Monday, July 27th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please make sure that you register. We have the link down here below. Also, you can scan this QR code, but make sure that you attend. And then our next slide, I think, is that it? I think that is our next. No, one important thing, I almost forgot. Want to make sure that you are donating. All right. Definitely, we need as much help as we can to make sure that we're making sure our communities are safe, healthy, and hopeful. So if you haven't donated, we would love for you to donate. And you can scan this QR code here as well as you can go to our website at citiesunited.org and click the donation button there as well. But make sure it doesn't have to be on the 15th. So we're looking forward to your donation. Thank you. And then that concludes our program today. We want to thank you again for attending our June roll call. And again, want to make sure that next month you're going to enroll because we'd love to have you back. And I'm sure today has been moving for everybody as much as it has for me, and it has filled my heart as well. And again, I want to thank all of our panelists and moderators today for sharing their story. So thank you. God bless everybody, and I hope you have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you,
God bless.
brother.
Thank you.
Peace.
Thank you.
Peace.
Thank you.